Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we'll do something slightly different than usual. I'll show you how I did some metal embossing to create some cute ornaments for the winter season. I've just been feeling really creative lately and I got so much inspiration watching other creators online. And basically I haven't been sketching or drawing that much, but I've been crafting and sewing a lot. And today I'll show you these metal embossing Christmas or holiday ornaments. So let's dive into how I made these. Here's everything I used for this project. I got some of these metal sheets for embossing. These metal sheets also exist in silver and copper. And then here I have some embossing tools, some towels as a soft base to emboss on top of. And over here I just have some things for sketching and cutting out the metal. Then of course if you want to do your own designs, you're gonna need some paper or a sketchbook. And here you can see where I collected my ideas and I did some initial sketches. So first I just wrote down a couple of ideas, like Nala, my boyfriend and I wanted to make a moon and some stars. Then some art objects like a palette, brushes, ink, this kind of thing. And so here you can already see of course, Nala had to be in there. First I sketched her based on a photo where she was standing, but I thought since she would be hanging, maybe I changed the legs up a bit. And then this portrait of Nala up here, I decided to turn into sort of a Santa Claus Nala. Because I thought her lion mane could basically be the Santa Claus beard. And then I just gave her a hat on top. And then, like I said, I wanted to do some stars, and at first I couldn't quite decide what type of design to do. There are so many beautiful designs online to look at for inspiration, and so here I tried out a couple of those, but in the end I decided that also here I just wanted to go more personal and more wonky. I just love that they have so much personality and character, and they kind of look like they're dancing or moving. And the moon too, I wanted to make it a bit curly and wonky, not too perfect. And for the sun, I also decided to go with a design that has a bit curly, wavy sun rays. Wasn't sure yet about the design of the sun rays. And then here I sketched out some of the other objects, like those art objects on the left. Then down here, this is my sewing machine. Here's a camera, which is a film camera, and then some film. And up at the top, you can see the cafetière and then the two favorite mugs of my boyfriend and I. And here I sketched out a moth. I took a reference from the internet. I think this is some kind of very common English moth. And I also thought about doing some birds, some kind of peace bird, but in the end I didn't do that design. But then once I had all these sketches done, I kind of realized that it would be hard to put the towel as well as the foil inside of the sketchbook and still be able to trace those things well. The thing is too that of course when you do the embossing, afterwards you turn it around, your design is going to be mirrored. And for some of my designs I didn't want that. You know, if you have text, for instance, of course you want to make sure the text is actually readable. And so I sketched them out on loose paper, also adapting the scale to make sure that the scale was good, and trying to fit as many as possible within one A4 sheet. And then I made mirrored copies of it. So here you can see those mirrored copies I made where everything is just turned inside out, or I don't know how to describe it, but you know what I mean. And so this way, for instance, here the label on the sewing machine is the right way around, just like here with this camera. And then I just put everything to the side and and I decided to start with the sheet with most of the designs on it first. So you have to put down some base of something soft, you know, it could be towels, any kind of fabric, anything really that you have that is soft, a blanket, because of course when you actually press on the metal, there needs to be something underneath that can give, so that you can actually emboss the metal. So here I just layered a couple of towels and I tried to make sure there were no wrinkles in it. So, you know, you don't have any disturbance when you do the embossing. But once I really looked at the towel, and you can see it on the video too, it has quite a lot of texture. The threads are really uneven. And so finally I decided to grab some other really smooth fabric that I have for sewing, and I put a layer of that on top, just to make sure that my lines wouldn't get disturbed by the texture of these dish towels. So these are the embossing tools that I have. As you can see, it's 3 different ones, and they basically have 6 different sized tips. And I do think it's useful to have different sized ones, so you can create some thicker and thinner lines or dots. But you definitely don't really need the embossing tools. I've seen people use pencils, the backs of brushes, I mean anything really that has a tip that is a bit rounded. You just don't want something to poke through your metal foil. And then I taped my piece of paper on top of the metal foil, just so it wouldn't move while I was doing the embossing. And I just got started. In some cases I just did the outline and then I added all the lines inside of the object later, all the details, the patterns, because you don't necessarily need your reference sketch for that. But here, for instance, of course, I needed this mirror image of the lettering I wanted to put. And of course, you can just always turn it around to check how it looks. And so here you see, my first little bit doesn't look too bad. And so I just basically kept going. Of course, you could do some of these things slightly differently. I see that some people first cut out the foil, and they also cut out their design, and then they just do one design on this piece of cut out foil. But I'm a bit frugal with this material, and since I only had 3 sheets, I really wanted to make sure to use as much as possible as I could, and that's why I first did all of these outlines, and then I only cut out the pieces afterwards to then do the final details of the embossing. And by the way, you don't necessarily have to buy this foil either. I've seen some people online use empty soda cans. Now I think here the metal will be a bit thicker, so a little bit harder to cut, but it's definitely possible, and I've seen some really great looking results. We just never really have cans in our household, or almost never, and that's why this wasn't really an option for me. I've also seen other people use those tubes that you have for tomato concentrate. So this is also a possibility. Once you finish them, you can cut them open and use those to do embossing. I think I've also seen some people using containers from takeout food, those kind of metallic containers. So I really think you can keep a lookout, and maybe you already have some material that you can use in your house. Or like from now on, when you throw things away, you can take a second look and maybe keep some of them. I'm definitely a big fan of upcycling and recycling and using all kinds of materials that you would just discard otherwise. So at this point I was done with all of these objects. I didn't do the moth at this point because this metal sheet was actually smaller than the sketch, and so I couldn't fit this moth on this remaining piece, and so I just thought I will see where else I can fit the moth later. So first I just cut all these into separate pieces, and then I did all the detailed cutting. And maybe I should say as a warning, I had kind of planned to do this entire project in one day, basically. And once I got started, I really realized that this was completely impossible, from doing the sketching, which already took me a whole day basically to come up with ideas and make all these decisions, then do the sketches again and copy them and all of that, to tracing everything, cutting out everything, and then re-embossing all the details, and finally poke all the holes and put it all on a thread and hang it on the wall. I definitely underestimated how many steps other than just the pure embossing this would be. And so if you decide to also do it, just now it's gonna take a little bit more than a day. But it's fun, and you could always just do a few per day or do it in multiple steps, one step per day, as I did. I did have lots of fun doing it, and I definitely have no regrets, and I love how they look now hanging on the wall. And so at first, when I started to cut everything out, I still wanted the outline to be seen, so I didn't cut on the outline, but right next to it. But I changed my mind about this quite soon, and you will see that later I really cut on the outline so that it basically disappears. And I also recut this easel here. I just thought that it looked better the other way. Now the foil was very easy to cut. I was a bit worried that it would be really tough, but actually it cut almost like paper. So that was no issue at all. But I just definitely wasn't used anymore of cutting out so many things and such fine details. Like, I kept thinking about kindergarten and how cutting is actually really a fine motor skill. Maybe for some of the smaller details it would have been useful to use some smaller scissors or some with a finer tip, but I just did everything with these office scissors because they're nice and sharp and comfortable, and that was fine too. Now for some of the remaining things, as you remember on the other sheet, I didn't fill up the whole sheet. And so I decided to just cut out every single design and try to match it with leftover pieces of foil. And so in this case, I used a slightly different approach, which worked just as well. And as I already mentioned, for some of the designs, like for this portrait here of my boyfriend, I didn't do all the final details immediately. So here you can see I left all the hair blank because I just figured that it would be easier to do that once it's cut out and once I've removed the paper sketch, and then you can actually see what you're embossing as you're doing it, so you have much more control over it. So for all these remaining objects, I just cut them out to try and fit them all on this one other sheet. And once I found a way to fit them all, I just basically taped them down, and then I did the embossing. And then finally it was time for the best part, which is of course the actual embossing. Now I have to say I really enjoyed it much more once I removed the sketches, and you can really see what you're doing right on the metal piece. And yeah, I just had fun filling it in with different patterns and strokes and designs, deciding on the different sized embossing tools that I used. And as you can see, for some of them, for instance for this moth, I wanted to have sort of a really thick, soft line for the body to make it look kind of furry and fluffy. And so here I just grabbed a really big brush and I used the back of it, which worked really well, by the way. Something I noticed during the process of this all was that the lines or the patterns that you draw, if you do it through the paper, it's still a bit softer. And so I ended up retracing most of the lines and shapes and patterns once more, once I had removed the paper. And what's cool too is that sometimes, if you have some three-dimensional thing that you're sketching, you can kind of press some of the entire sections out further and then still emboss another pattern on top of it, if you know what I mean. For instance, with this camera that I did, I wanted this lens, so the inner circle, the lens of the camera that is the most forward, in real life. And so I just kind of made this entire section come out by pressing it with my nail and scratching it with my nail. And then I rewrote the text again on top of this. So you can kind of have multi-dimensional embossing. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, I used my own ideas and I did my own sketches, but I just want to point out that there's endless inspiration online, and I'm pretty sure there's also lots of free templates. If you don't feel so secure about sketching something, then you can just look up these templates for metal embossing online or on Pinterest, print them out, and all you have to do is trace them and you will have something beautiful. And I just think there's so many options, you could do it in such different styles, way more classy, elegant, or traditional, decorative, or go full Christmassy. I mean, I've seen lots of people do all kinds of really Christmassy theme, little candy canes, reindeers, presents, Santa Clauses, I don't know what, And so here you can see all of the final ornaments that I've made. I really love them. I mean, I know that they're a bit silly, some of them, or maybe a bit weird. They're not very Christmassy, but I just think that fits us, our little family. We don't really celebrate Christmas so much, and we don't decorate for Christmas. And so having these little ornaments, it just feels right for us. It's really personalized and it's just cute and a bit silly, and it makes me smile when I see them. Oh yeah, and I also made a few, like this horse or something, out of some of the leftovers. I kind of had some weirdly cut shapes, once I cut out my objects. And I basically just looked at them and tried to see, okay, what do I see in it? And so that's how this horse came to be, that second moon, and this other creature that I'm not sure what it is, some kind of a bird or... And then I just cut out some more stars out of some of the small leftovers. You might have also noticed that picture frame. I basically used one of the sheets, well, part of it, to make a cover for this picture frame. And I just put some stars on the frame, as well as some patterns kind of on the inside and the outside, if you can see that. And I even thought maybe once I put down these ornaments from the wall, I will just pick one or two that feel a bit more universal, or I make some little collection and maybe I will put it in the picture frame. We'll see. And then basically I did this off camera. I poked a little hole through them with the needle, and I just used some white sewing thread to thread through. Well, first I sort of laid them all out and came up with a bit of a distribution that I liked. And then, as you can see, I kind of threaded them on a couple of strings, and I just hung them on some bamboo stick that we have for plants. And I hung that bamboo stick up on the wall. Yeah, and I just think that it looks so cute. I mean, I really enjoy it. Every time I walk by, it creates a little airstream and they kind of move and make their little metallic noises. So yeah, I just think it's a really cute idea. Definitely had lots of fun doing it. I can only recommend you try it. So if you're feeling crafty or Christmassy, you want to make your own decorations, I think obviously this is a good idea for Christmas ornaments. I've seen a lot of people make them for their Christmas trees, so that's a great idea. You could also use them to attach to your gifts for this Christmas. Let me know in the comments if you're gonna give this a try, and if so, what kind of things you're gonna make. Thank you so much for watching this video. I still have lots of things I've made to show you, and I already have more footage of other things. So there's definitely gonna be another video next week, and I'll hope to see you then again. Anyway, let me know what you think and if you're gonna give this idea a try. Stay creative and take care.